From the halls of San Francisco City Hall to the Port Commission to the National Victory Campaign. Our next guest, Leslie Katz, has certainly walked the halls of power. Leslie, welcome.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks, David.
So you've had quite a diverse political career.
I have.
What is it like now to be a member of the San Francisco Port Commission? Did you ever think that that would be where you'd be sitting? And what is it like?
I'm absolutely loving it. I don't think people realize how much is happening along the waterfront. And everyone hears about the America's Cup, which is extraordinary, and what a boon for San Francisco to have been lucky enough to get awarded that race. But there's so much more happening all along the water with all the businesses that are coming in the wharf area and the renovations that are taking place there.
I mean, people think, San Francisco's days as a port city are over, and that's not true. I mean, San Francisco's port is incredibly vital and a real moneymaker for the city.
It is. It is. The port is actually one of, I think, only two entities in the city that are called enterprise agencies. The airport and the port both are actually generating their own revenue to run their operations and are self-sustaining. Right,
and next year, I believe 2012 is the 150th birthday for the port.
That's right.
So you guys have been around for a while.
We have, we have.
Does it, when you first got into politics, which was in the early 1990s, correct?
Elected office,
Elected
yes.
office.
Middle,
yeah. Did you ever think that an open lesbian would be a member of the San Francisco Port Commission? I mean, it's always had the reputation of being kind of an old boys network, much less a woman's place.
Although what's fascinating is we have 4 members out of 5 on the commission are now women.
Right.
And our executive, and the director of the port is also a woman,
Monique Moyer. That's exactly right.
And we're unique across the country in being a truly woman-run port.
A woman-run business.
Exactly.
Does that ever, not going to say raise eyebrows, that sounds kind of old-fashioned, but when you speak with your colleagues around the country,
I've been on such a short time, I haven't had a chance to meet too many of my colleagues yet.
Yeah, but I mean, it is unique. There are not a lot of ports that are so heavily run by women.
I don't think any other ports are run by a woman, and certainly not with a full port commission.
Right.
So heavily
one of the things that is
never mind having a lesbian on it.
There you go. I think you may be the first open lesbian on the port commission.
I am.
Yeah.
I think the first open LGBT person.
What has been more, I shouldn't say interesting, but you were a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors from
96 to 2001.
And then now on the Port Commission. Which has been more of a challenge for you?
Sounds like a leading question.
Yeah.
Well, certainly being on the Board of Supervisors, in part because we did oversee some of the issues that face the port. So I'm familiar with a lot of the issues that are coming up now, from land development issues to balancing community interests and business interests. So I was familiar with a lot of that. On the Board of Supervisors, at the time I was there, it was a citywide elected position, so I had to represent the entire city, not just a district. And so the issues that we faced ran the gamut. And that was also the time during the tech boom. A lot of environmental issues were just starting to percolate up. People thought I was crazy when I wanted to implement a plan for the city to find safer alternatives to pesticide use.
Right.
Now it's a model
and now it's a model for other places. San Francisco has gone back and forth between district elections and citywide. What are your thoughts on that? Are you able to weigh in on that?
My personal feeling is I don't think we'll ever go back to complete citywide, but I do think it'd be nice to have perhaps a balance of 6 districts and 5 at-large seats, or 6 and 5.
Is that even talked about?
It is. It is. In part because when you have districts, it's hard to get somebody looking at the city as a whole. So something that might affect the waterfront on the east side is really not going to be an important issue to somebody who represents the Sunset. But you do need to pay attention to all of that.
And certainly as openly gay people, such as you and I are, there was a time when we're aware that maybe you could only be an openly gay supervisor if you were elected from a quote-unquote gay district like District 8. But now in a sense the city's small. We serve all these. Exactly.
And I think when we were elected citywide, we had more LGBT representation on the board.
We did.
When I served then than we do currently under districts.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The other nice part of having some citywide component is the importance of coalition building. So the representatives traditionally of, say, the Chinese American community and the Latino American community had to work closely with the African American community and the LGBT community and really work together to fashion legislation and positions. Now I think we're almost a little bit more balkanized by, well, that's one district for one community and that's the district for another.
I mean, there is a strange sort of forced prejudice in it, I've always thought. I mean, I know it annoys me sometimes when it says, oh, well, that's the gay TV host David Perry, as opposed to, well, no, I'm gay TV. I'm a host.
Right.
I happen to be gay. Does it bug you if someone says, that's the lesbian port commissioner, Leslie Katz?
I haven't heard that yet, but I actually was very pleased when I was on the Board of Supervisors following some other lesbians who were always identified as the lesbian supervisor, Roberta Achtenberg, for example. When I was on the board, I really worked hard to be known as occasionally as the environmental supervisor, as the tech supervisor, or the women's health supervisor. And when I was identified that way, I really was pleased that the moniker lesbian supervisor was there, certainly, and I was proud of it, but it was nice to be known for something else, and that I think the city had really moved beyond that kind of identity politics, which is nice.
There's a stereotype of some male politicians that they're policy wonks, but I think in a nice way you were considered kind of a wonkish supervisor. You like the policy stuff.
I did, very much.
And especially the tech stuff. Was that something that came to you naturally? How did you become kind of the tech-educated supervisor?
It actually started when I was on the Board of Trustees for City College, and there we were focused on training our students for the jobs of the future. And at that point in time we recognized, even though then it wasn't, we referred to it sometimes as multimedia, City College set up one of the first multimedia studies programs or degrees in the country, which was sort of the multidisciplinary training with graphics and English and design and everything else that would come into working in, at that time, the .com business. And so I worked with making sure that we were creating opportunities and programs for our students then so that they would graduate and get jobs that were dynamic and exciting. So because I looked into the industry while on the college board, it was a natural when I got to the Board of Supervisors to say this is really going to be the engine for San Francisco.
Yeah, and of course now it is the engine. I know with some of the work we do with City Hall and China SF, when you talk about San Francisco, one of the things that it's known for is being the tech capital. It's the new media capital.
Right.
I know
we actually once had at the time it was called the Multimedia Summit, and it was the first of its kind to bring together all the stakeholders. But that really was an eye-opener, I think, for everyone in the city to realize how much we needed to work together and streamline our process so that we could bring in some of these new businesses.
Now, one of the things that I know you're also involved in is the Victory Campaign or the Victory Fund. And
are
they different, or do they work?
It's the same. The Victory Fund, and then there's the Victory Campaign Board, which is a subset, if you will, of the Victory Fund. The Victory Fund is the umbrella, so it has both a 501c3 or a nonprofit educational side, which is called the Gay and Lesbian Leadership Institute, and then the Victory Campaign Board, which is the political side, where we support candidates, we have a PAC, we raise money for candidates, and that's what's called a 501c4 that's under different tax structures.
And very specifically, I mean, in short, its mission is to elect openly LGBT people to elected office, correct?
At all levels,
At all levels. So whether it's a dog catcher in Duluth or a port commissioner in San Francisco.
Absolutely.
And you had a very successful year, I hear.
We had a phenomenal year. As disappointing as I think many people felt this last election cycle was, and certainly, as a partisan Democrat here, it was disappointing for the Democrats. The Victory Campaign, we had 168 endorsed LGBT candidates across the country, and I think our success rate was almost 68%, which was the highest percentage of any organization, any party, any other entity in the country in terms of getting all of their endorsed candidates elected.
Now, you're speaking as a partisan Democrat, or all 100 and some people who were elected through somehow being associated with the Victory Fund, were they automatically all Democrat?
No, not at all. We are.
So the stereotype of an LGBT elected official always being a Democrat is no longer the case?
That's not the case. We had a few Republicans coming through. We try and encourage more because we think it would be important for the Republican Party to embrace more LGBT members. It's certainly the predominance of elected officials, LGBT elected officials are Democrats, but that's not always the case. Some of the offices are nonpartisan, and we did have several Republicans that ran this past cycle.
Does that surprise you, or do you think that's just the natural evolution of the LGBT political reality?
Probably give you two answers. I could give you the pat answer.
Give me the pat, then give me the one that,
we're open to everybody as a partisan. I'm like, are they kidding? Are they nuts?
What do you think the Obama administration, if you did a report card now, strictly on LGBT issues, what would the Obama administration get as of right today in July 2011? An A, a B, a C, an incomplete?
I like the idea of an incomplete. But I do think the Obama administration has certainly done more for the LGBT community than any other administration before. Again, you have to look at each administration during their time. For example, we were pushing for Don't Ask, Don't Tell under the Clinton administration. That at the time, that was viewed as a step forward. So looking at...
Do you think you were wrong, the people who pushed for that then?
I'm not
I mean,
sure.
hindsight's 20/20, I know.
And I'm not sure if it was implemented the way we thought and had hoped it would be. But at the time, it seemed like a step, an improvement versus the witch hunts that were going on prior to that. But in reality, it was not what we'd hoped for. I think, given the current time and the focus and the much more significant increase in support, and you know, on a myriad of issues, as well as increased visibility for the LGBT community, I think the Obama administration, and I'd like to hope that they would do more. I love the button that somebody wore to a meeting with in the White House recently. An LGBT leader that went there said, "Evolve already." He keeps saying his views are evolving, but you know, I understand the politics of it, the concern that if there's going to be a close election, to not be out in front on same-sex marriage. But you know, I personally would wish that he would come out and support it, because the people that are opposed to same-sex marriage are not likely to be opposed, not likely to support him anyway.
Yeah, they're not going to evolve to to vote for Barack Obama.
And it may not be the decisive issue either. That's I think, you know, at one point in time maybe that would have swayed some people, but now I think people are looking, luckily, at so many more issues that they're really not concerned about who we're able to marry.
Yeah, it's kind of nice, even as an openly gay person, to know that, you know, that's not so newsworthy as it once was. It's kind of nice.
And I think Hollywood has had a huge, huge impact on that we have LGBT characters on so many shows now that are no longer for comic relief or other things. And just last night I was watching a show that had a very mundane, an FBI agent who was a lesbian, and they had her kiss her girlfriend and just move on, and everyone was hanging out at their house as just any other couple. And it just struck me how wonderful that was just a non-issue.
Now, besides the political work, being on the Port Commission and working with the Victory Campaign, the Victory Fund, what is your other business? I know you have a practice that...
Sure, I have a government affairs consulting practice, so assist nonprofits, individuals, companies in navigating through either the political process or understanding the steps that they would need to go through, how to build coalitions, basically helping with strategy towards being effective in what they're trying to accomplish.
Do you think some gay-owned businesses, just by the nature of, for the last 20 years, we've had to navigate so many different government relationships and figure out legislation, have kind of a knack for this?
I think they do, and we also call it our secret sauce, that there's now so many LGBT elected officials and LGBT people in leadership positions, certainly in California, that I think it gives us a bit of an edge because we have a natural sort of affinity and relationship.
Right.
I had done some of this work for a company previously, and my counterparts were having a hard time getting a meeting with somebody, and I got it right away from my company and said, how'd you do that? The queer mafia.
I was about to say, as my friend Anthony calls it, the pansy mafia. Well, don't give away the secret. We don't give away the secret. Now, in our last few moments, let's talk about some issues politically that are coming up, and I'd love you to look into a crystal ball. Everyone wants to know, of course, the endless debate over same-sex marriage. We just got New York State. We got Iowa, for goodness sake.
Unbelievable.
But each one is a different way. And in California, it has been this torturous road of legislation and judicial, and now appeal.
Right.
What's going to happen, and what do you think the impact, if any, of the New York State decision will be on the Prop 8 decision?
As a lawyer by training, I'm very hopeful that the courts will come to the right decision on the Prop 8 case that's working its way up. I think that the New York situation will have a very favorable impact because, again, it negates some of the pseudo-arguments that the yes on 8 people had, and I think their rhetoric and their arguments were really fairly slim. They put on virtually no evidence, and I just don't see how real legal scholars can look at anything other than what was presented at the trial. And then I thought Judge Walker's decision was absolutely brilliant. And it will be really hard, I think, for higher courts to come to anything.
The next time we're back, hopefully Prop 8 will no longer be the law of the land, and we'll be asking Leslie for her informed political opinion again.
I look forward to that.
Next up, Daniel Paul, we're going to talk about